Well, the big news, I mean, which has been, I mean, within the last couple hours, but because Dre, you and I spoke around 2 o'clock today, it's just after five, and when I last saw Twitter, which was probably 10 a.m. or noon, it was keep an eye out on Mike McDonald as far as the DC for the Ravens, and then by the time you and I spoke at 2 p.m., it was all signs are pointing to Mike McDonald is about to take this position. So it looks like Mike McDonald is moving on after a marvelous 1 year stint here at Michigan, where he did a phenomenal job. I want to make sure I give him his due credit because I do think it was more of what he did and less his predecessor. So he did a terrific job.
You just don't like. You were not a Down Brown fan,
No,
man. That's
it was not. And the results showed that well, I guess that part is to be determined. But no, but Mike McDonald did a terrific job, phenomenal job. And he is now heading back to the Baltimore Ravens, which is where he coached before this season with Michigan, and is going back as defensive coordinator. So, Dre, what are your thoughts on the change and Jim Harbaugh potentially needing to find a new defensive coordinator for that defense?
well. Well, for one, I mean, I think this there's a bit of comedy in this whole thing. It's kind of like like he had young Mikey, working for John Harbaugh, and he's like, he has aspirations to move up the corporate ladder, and and John just doesn't have the room, but he likes him. He said, hey, I got a brother that has like a little smaller business who could use an intern for a season. And how about you go up there, check it out, do what you can do, and we'll see if we can find a spot for you. And then he goes and does it, and then earns his way back into the bigger company with John. It's funny, like if you really like, it's very very unique. Um, but I'll say this: I can't truthfully say it's a catastrophic loss for the program. It's a loss that will be felt. Um, because part of it is like I'm not sure just how big of an impact Mike McDonald had on the defense this year. Because it's not big enough sample size, right? I'm not saying to do anything. I thought he did a good job, but after one season, just him as a coach, I can't say Mike McDonald is an elite defensive coordinator. I can't say he's a great defensive coordinator. Um, my opinion of him is that he is a young defensive mind on the rise, right, and shows promise. Uh, so tough loss, but Des, me and you've been talking about this, been very consistent with this since the season wrapped up, which is we know this upcoming season, if this program wants to repeat the success it had this year, it will not be with the same formula. They were not going to be leaning on their defense this upcoming season anyway, just due to the amount of departures they're having on the defensive side of the ball. They're going to have to find their own new identity anyway, right? So, and they were going to have to lean on the offense, lean on Gaddis coming back. Looks like he's going to be back so far. JJ or Cade, taking over the reins or keeping the reins, and this offense continue to take that next step, right? And scoring more points opposed to being more ball control. So it's a tough loss, not catastrophic, and I guess it remains to be seen because it was just 1 year sample size.
So you're not ready to call him a young Bill Belichick just yet?
Not quite, man, not quite. or Wade Phillips or Dick LeBeau or whatever you want.
What about a young Don Brown? Are you ready to call him that?
Hey man, he got to grow a mustache for that first, man. He's too clean shaven for that. Donnie rocks a nice mustache.
For sure. Mark, what are your thoughts on Mike McDonald? Let's assume he will be moving on to the Ravens. So, what are your thoughts on the departure?
Yeah, like Dre, it strikes me funny as to the dynamic with brother and brother being head coach and boss, and the the rise through the ranks with the Ravens, and then, let's not give him a defensive coordinator's job in the NFL. Let's see what he can do and get the internship, like Dre said, get the internship at the collegiate level, try him out. Hey, did he do okay? Yeah. And like you said, Des, before the show, the risk all falls on Jim, and John can just kick back. Okay, I like what he did there. Let's bring him back. Hope you enjoyed
the 1 year of success.
1 year of Mike McDonald there, and there it is. So, yeah, and Dre also brought it up. When somebody has a long track record of success, then you can start to, the bigger the sample size, the more you can understand and have a read on how much of it's this individual, because they're churning through all sorts of different players. They've been able to do it with, this style quarterback or that style quarterback, or, depending on the defensive side, they've had, their ups and downs in regards to recruiting classes and what kind of talent they've had and how good the conference has been. And we've seen them do it with all these different challenges and styles of play that they've had to stack up against, and they've been consistent. Brent Venables being kind of the industry standard in college football recently in the last decade. And so with Mike McDonald, I believe if John Harbaugh wants him back, then to run a defense in the NFL, I got to think that he's that good. But based on the evidence, it's an improved defense. But they also had those two DNs, and they had Dax Hill, and it's some pretty darn good players to make it work. The one thing I'll go back to that I thought Jim Harbaugh was really the new Jim Harbaugh, the 2021 version, of being a little bit more clear with his thoughts, and that I really locked in on, and it proved to be true based on the success, was he said that he was impressed with Mike McDonald, and this is going back to Big Ten Media Days, because he could evaluate the skill sets of the players, and he could put them in the right place, and he could work the defense in such a way that would not expose certain guys and really play to their strengths. And Harbaugh said that that's what he really was impressed with, is his ability to really evaluate the player very quickly and accurately, and then put them in the best position to succeed, and then be able to form a defense with the 11 guys on the field. And shoot, what are you playing, more like 18 or 20 over the course of a game, and put those guys in the right place to play to their strengths.
Yeah, and it's funny that you said that, Mark, because I was going to bring up Brent Venables. When you look at a person with his track record, granted there's an age difference, but when you look at a guy like Brent Venables, who had done it at Clemson for 9-10 seasons, that's something you can have more substance behind that loss for Dabo Swinney as a defensive coordinator. You can say, without a doubt, that is a big loss for that program and that head coach and that staff, where I do think that Mike McDonald is a big loss for the staff, but at the same time, like you both have mentioned, it is a 1 year sample size. So it's difficult to put too much weight on it, but still, I think Mike McDonald did a phenomenal job. And when it comes to coaching, and especially in a coordinator role, the best ones take the personnel that they have, and they put the best system in place for that personnel. And the fact that Mike McDonald made the changes of that defensive strategy and attacking as far as those defensive ends, and just really letting Aiden and Ojabo loose and just go get the quarterback, I think it shows that he is a really good coach. And it'll be interesting to see what that next step is, and what the next, who's going to come in to replace McDonald, and what that's going to look like. Is the defense going to look the same? Are they going to make a change? Is it going to, there's a lot of things that come into play, and you wonder if there's going to be any fall off next year. And I would assume yes, not so much for Mike McDonald because he left, but more so the personnel that is leaving, with arguably the number one draft pick in Aiden Hutchinson, and Ojabo, who's a top 15, 20 first round draft pick as well as Dax Hill. So I think there's going to be some drop off, but how big or small that drop off is, will be big on who's the next defensive coordinator and who comes in.